But the seeds are planted with the chaos of the surrounding world that we would get in the later movies. And despite its 93-minute runtime, it really does draw out the plot before it starts to dive in. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to Epictastic Joshua. I talk movies, TV, music, and anime. Welcome to another franchise revisit. My name is Joshua Drake, and we are here to revisit the world of Mad Max. With the release of Furiosa in just a couple days, I'm going to give my reviews of all 4 Mad Max movies. Starting off with the original classic here, Mad Max. This was released in 1979. This is directed by George Miller, who co-wrote the script with James McCausland, based on the story by George Miller and Brian Kennedy. This stars Mel Gibson as the Mad Max Rockatansky, Joanne Samuel, Hugh Keys-Byrne, Steve Bisley, and Roger Ward. The film takes place in a dystopian near-future Australia in the midst of social collapse, and oil and such is going crazy as such. So a police officer turned vigilante is basically trying to live his life and spends a lot of the movie protecting his family until one day something happens to his wife and kid, and this drives them to the point of vengeance with a crazy biker gang. Mad Max is a franchise that has been stood the test of time. It's been part of the cultural phenomenon ever since 1979. It's had a significant impact on modern popular culture. It's deeply embedded in it with so many references to the film's dystopian, apocalyptic, and apocalyptic future, not just with this movie, but also with the sequels. There's also a lot of influences on other things with Kesha and James Cameron, and songs like Puritan and James Wan, Lee Winnell, and mangas has also influenced David Fincher, Zack Snyder, Hideo Kojima, Akira Toriyama, and even the recent film, Fury Road, which has been inspired by that, with Christopher Nolan and Space Jam and such. So this is one of the pop culture phenomenons. This solidified George Miller into a potential worthy filmmaker. And also, this also was one of the first movies that put Mel Gibson on the map. Now, I am more than aware about the controversies about Mel Gibson. I'm looking at this from an actor perspective where I'm separating the art from the artist. We are not talking about his controversy whatsoever. So I first saw this after I saw Mad Max Fury Road, and I wanted to see what the original trilogy was like. And at the time, I really enjoyed the original series of films for the most part. With Beyond Thunderdome, I wasn't the biggest fan of until I revisited it, and I've grown on it. So going into this, I was very happy. I was really excited to rewatch this to see how it all got its starts. I will say, this is a great start to the series. It really does take it to that full scale. Now, of course, some people will look at this and say it's cheesy and it's not as good compared to Fury Road or even The Road Warrior or what from earlier buzz is saying about Furiosa. But I look at this first movie as the one that set the groundwork. For the budget that this movie has, that this is a $350,000 to $400,000 film, you can definitely say this was one of the most profitable independent films at the time until the Blair Witch Project. And they actually really took the time to make it feel like this was going to be absolutely competently handled. And also, this is one of the first Australian films to be shot with an anamorphic widescreen besides the cast that ate Paris. It feels like you're watching a movie here, and I really definitely enjoyed the way this movie looks. It looks very well done. I think it looks incredible, and for everything they had with this movie, This film was really creative and really well done. It's a simple story first. It doesn't go full action heavy until we get to the sequel, which I really do appreciate. George Miller wants to take the time and get us to know Mad Max before shit hits the fans. And talking about the whole dystopian future and the themes of what's going on there, it's very well handled. I think it's really well done, and you get to see basically Max lose his mind. It is a solid start here. It's a smaller scale, and it's the outlier because the seeds are planted with the chaos of the surrounding world that we would get in the later movies. And despite its 93-minute runtime, it really does draw out the plot before it starts to dive in, but it starts off very worthwhile for the action that you do get here. And also, you do have a great memorable villain in this movie who is really memorable. Some people will say this is not a very memorable villain, but you have to understand, the first movie in, we're not always going to have a memorable villain, and for the budget that this movie had at the time, they couldn't really do a whole lot. And this movie did face a lot of production problems as they were making this movie, but they were able to get this movie done and get it out to the world, and with all the struggles, it really did a good job here. You have Hugh Keys-Byrne as Toe Cutter. This is a great villain. He's very memorable. You see what he does to these characters and to Max's family is very well done. I really thought they actually really took the time and made it very interesting and made it very integral, and I think they made it as much as what they could do. George Miller's direction in terms of the simple story and planting the seeds and then planting the action is actually really works for the better of it, and it really makes you want to see how he's gonna get crazy with the franchise next. So you definitely give a lot of credit to that, and I actually think that's actually a very solid way to go about it. So despite the short runtime and despite the issues there, it really does go into it. And the finale is just really satisfying as well. You have a great revenge-soaked finale as well, and it really does help. So this movie does set the groundwork, but it's a nice slow build-up that will lead us into the franchise that we will get. Mad Max does come focused later on, but so far we do get exactly what you're gonna get here. The world does look like a dystopian future for the budget they have. The action scenes are very well filmed, they're very well thrilling. The movie knows exactly what it is. It does have cheesy and fun, but this is only but it's also very dark here. So I've heard some people say this one's not that great and it's not that cheesy, but this is the stepping stones to before what you would see Mad Max is now. And when Max loses his family, it is heartbreaking. It is devastating, and it is pretty devastating to watch, and it's very dark and drenched into it. The other actors, of course, acting wise, of course, this is Mel Gibson's breakout role. You can say what you want about him. He is a controversial figure, whether you disagree with his opinions or such. I'm not talking about his opinions or on such or whatever he thinks. That's how he chooses to feel. I will say, as an actor, I do have to respect him as an actor. The guy is a great actor, despite whatever you want to say about him. It's Mad Max, Lethal Weapon, Braveheart. He's also directed stuff like The Passion of the Christ, Apocalypto, and Braveheart. Guy is a great actor, and he's, despite all the controversies surrounding him, I really do think for this first Mad Max film, he does a great job. Joanne Samuel is Jessie. She does pretty good here. You also have his child in there, and other actors, of course, Steve Bisley, Tim Burns, Roger Ward. All of those actors do really good. The late Hugh Keays-Byrne. I did talk about him a little bit here, but I'm gonna mention him again. And I'm gonna mention him in Fury Road, but I think he does a very good job into what he is required of him. Yeah. I will say the only nitpick I have is that this movie does have a little bit of a slow pace, so by today's standards, this movie will test your patience, but for me, it just makes it more worthwhile, and it makes me really care about the story and really care about the characters. Yeah, some things may not have aged well, but this was the 70s, but I can let that pass. I like appreciating old filmmaking and admiring new filmmaking. You have to appreciate the old ways of filmmaking to accept the new styles. Well, overall, I think this original Mad Max is a great start to what would become a great franchise that's still consistent to this day, and is the reason why we still have movies like Fury Road and Furiosa. I think if this did not make a mark, and despite the polarizing reception back in the day, if this didn't make the mark it did, I don't think this would have ever became a franchise. I really like the direction. I think the action for what you get here is great. I really like the revenge thriller aspect, and Mel Gibson does a very good job here, as well as a memorable villain. If you haven't seen the first Mad Max, definitely watch it. It is worth your time. Well, that's gonna do it for the video that you just watched. If you want to see more, my channel icon is up here. If you want to see more content from me, all my social medias are right here in this end card. I will also leave a playlist and a video here for you to see what the channel is about. As always, acknowledge me, stay epictastic, join the Epictasticness, and you guys keep it cool.